Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, the podcast for dads, especially the ones that love sneakers. I'm your host, KG. However you're tuning in right now, man, we appreciate you being here, hanging out. You be listening to anything, watching anything in the world, so the fact that you're here means a whole lot. Well, this is the second episode of a double episode release, episode 9. If you have not checked that out, that's with my friend DJ Brown, the founder of Stock Dads. Both these episodes are dealing with finances. I think this is important because as men, we're responsible for leading our home in every area, and that includes our finances. The number one cause of divorce is money stress and money problems. It can be extremely stressful, especially because I don't think we're taught about good foundation growing up. You know, a lot of us, we grew up in homes that were barely making it by, living paycheck to paycheck. And just to be frank, this is a different world we're living in right now than the one that our parents were parenting in when we were kids. Just inflation is through the roof. Student loans were not as big a deal for people before our generation. The cost of college has skyrocketed. Student loans are paralyzing the millennial generation like no other generation before. And so this is just something that I don't feel like our generation was adequately prepared to tackle all the problems that are happening with inflation and student loans and the housing market. And so we wanted to make sure that we took, in a podcast helping men win in marriage and parenting, we wanted to make sure that we took the time to try to set our husbands, our dads up with a groundwork, so to say, for how to win with your money. And how to build generational wealth doing that. And so in episode 9 with DJ Brown, we talk a lot about the investing side, the building wealth side of things, which is absolutely a part of the equation. But some of y'all might have been coming out of that episode listening to it like, well, dude, that sounds great, but I don't have that cash flow to be investing. I don't have that money to be pouring out into building generational wealth. I mean, we are barely scraping by. Like, I can't afford eggs right now, right? And so I wanted to do a second episode to release where we could talk about, like, all right, if you're just getting by, if you're just living paycheck to paycheck, what do you do? How do you break out of that cycle? Is it even possible to break out of that cycle? Spoiler alert, it is possible. We did it. I'm gonna take you guys through my journey, the journey that me and my wife went on, our journey, just try to give you guys some real practical things you can start doing. You and your wife can sit down, you can start working together, getting on a plan together to break free of the paycheck to paycheck living, start building wealth, start having financial freedom, not stressing about your money. Before we get into that though, I want to talk about the sneaker of the week. Right here behind me, it is the Jordan 13. It's my only pair of 13s I own. I'm not a crazy fan of 13s, but I like this colorway. Obviously, I'm an Eagles fan. Go Eagles. I am recording this. This episode is coming out the day after the Super Bowl. I'm recording this pre-Super Bowl. I have no idea what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a great game between the Eagles and Chiefs. So much drama in it. Andy Reid, the Kelsey brothers, all that. I have no idea. When this episode releases, I might be the happiest dude in the world. I might be sad. I'm hoping for a good game. I think it's going to be a great game. I don't know if it'll be as good as when the Eagles won their first Super Bowl against the Patriots. That was just a legendary game, even if you're not a fan of either teams. But the Jordan 13 Lucky Green has that Kelly Green vibe of the old school Eagle jerseys, and I absolutely love that. And so I have been rocking these kicks like every other day for the last 3 weeks. I love them. I don't wear them enough. And with the Eagles being in the Super Bowl, it was just kind of one of those, like, I'm gonna rock my Eagles colors as often as I can. So they've been getting a lot of wearings the last couple weeks, so had to put them up here. Regardless of the outcome of the Super Bowl, I love the Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. Now, let's get into it. Me and my wife, we were dinks, dual income, no kids, for a couple years. We decided to buy a house in April 2017. Probably the worst financial decision we ever made. If someone's pressuring you into buying a house, don't buy a house before you're ready. I don't care how great of an investment it is. I don't care the deal, like how beautiful it is. Like, don't buy a house before you're ready. and there's a lot of experts that will give you different opinions on like when you're ready or not. Easily the worst financial decision we ever made was buying that house. We were not ready for it. We loved that house though. 3 months after buying that house, our basement flooded. It was a beautiful finished basement. It had like 10-foot ceilings, fireplace. I was getting, the big 75-inch TV to put over there. It had a little office that was going to be like my home office / man cave spot down there. Full bathroom down there. Like, it was a beautiful basement. Like, the basement sold the house for me, right? It flooded 3 months in. Like, we hadn't even bought furniture. Thankfully, we hadn't. But, like, we hadn't even bought furniture to put in that yet. And so, in that, like, obviously, we had to get it taken care of. We didn't have the cash to, pay for all the waterproofing and repairs that had to be made. And it cost us about $25,000 to get that basement back to where it was beforehand. We ain't have that. And so we ended up financing the waterproofing repair. Now, the waterproofing itself was like 16, 17 grand. And then the rest of it was like reinstalling the flooring. We had to put all the new walls in there because like they completely gutted. And like the whole thing was completely gutted. And so about 16,000 was like the waterproofing. And then like the rest of that was kind of finishing everything else off. So, we financed the 16,000. Like we didn't have a choice. Either, the water was going to keep coming in or, we had to get rid of it somehow. And so we had to finance that. And, we added that on top of our student loans, on top of our car payments. And all in all, we looked up in January of 2018, and not including the mortgage, we were $80,000 in debt. 80 grand. Which to some of y'all might be like, that ain't that much. To others of y'all, like, yo, that's a lot. And some of y'all, you might be right about there. Now, like, we made decent money. Like, we made good money. Like, we were both working full time. I was a youth pastor, but she was a nurse. So obviously she made more money. That's why I'm the one that stays home with the kids now. But we made decent money, but we had like almost $2,000 a month going out of our pocket to non-mortgage debt payments, right? The waterproofing loan, the student loans, the car payments, like all these other things. We had about $2,000 a month almost that was going out of our pocket just to debt payments. In January of 2018, man, I had a day off and this debt was weighing on me. It was stressing me out. And so much of that money was just interest payments, right? Like it wasn't even hitting the premium on stuff, like a little bit was, but like the majority of this almost $2,000 a month we were paying out of pocket was just paying on the interest of stuff. And so it was majorly stressing me out. It was weighing on me, like literally physically could feel the presence of this debt. And so even though we had, two solid incomes, really good household income, we lived in this beautiful house, like we was broke. We had like maybe $1,000 in our savings. Like we had 2 good cars, but like not overly fancy cars or nothing like that. But we were broke. We were living paycheck to paycheck. And we knew that, we already had the water thing in the basement happen, but we knew like another emergency with owning a home, another emergency could pop up at any given time that we just weren't prepared for. And I said, there has to be a better way. Like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live with the stress of this debt. Feeling like a cinder block is just hanging from my neck. Like, I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to find a way out of this. It was stressing us out. It was just causing tension, and not really tension, I mean, like just tension in life that we were, trying to combat together. And we said, like, there has to be a better way. There has to be something that we could do about this. And so I had a day off. Becky was at work, and I just started researching stuff. I started looking more into Dave Ramsey's principles. If you haven't heard of him, he's like one of the biggest financial gurus in America, and he's very, very different. It's almost like there's Dave Ramsey's way, and then there's like everyone else's way. So it's like he's very different and set apart. His following is almost like a cult following sort of thing. Like it's a little weird. But it's like, if you know him, you know him. If you don't, it's not hard to find his stuff. Just Google his name. But like, he is the man when it comes to getting people out of debt. Like, he's the guy. He is the debt-free guy, and like pretty much every financial person in America recognizes Dave Ramsey as like the guy to help people get out of debt, the average man get out of debt. And so I started really taking in some of his content. I spent like hours this one day just taking in his content. And while Becky's at work, like I started writing out this plan. I started, crunching all these numbers. Like, I could get nerdy like that. I started crunching all these numbers together and saying like, hey, if we do this and we do that and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, hey, at the end of doing all this work and like creating multiple spreadsheets, like I can nerd out on this stuff. I looked at it and I said, in 2 years, we could be debt free besides the house. I said, in 2 years, like we could have no debt. And so Becky gets home from work that night. She hops in her shower, and then she comes down. She's eating dinner, and I'm like pacing the kitchen, like I'm pacing back and forth. I'm just walking around, and I was like, I gotta talk to you about something. Like, I gotta talk to you about something, And I laid out the whole plan. I started walking her through all of it because we were both feeling it. Like, neither one of us wanted to keep living like this. And so I laid out this entire plan to her. And she just looked at me, and I remember she just looked me in the eye and she said, let's do it. And so we were in this thing, and we started going after and chasing our debt-free journey. And so what I want to do in this episode is just kind of lay out a couple of key things that we did that got us to the point where we looked down, and it took us under 2 years, but we paid off $80,000 of non-mortgage debt in 20 months. Under 2 years, just over a year and a half, we paid off $80,000 of debt. All the student loans, gone. All the home repair loans, gone. All the car payments, gone. And then we didn't know we were going to do this, but like a year or two later, we ended up selling our house because we moved out here to Indiana. We ended up selling our house, and we rent out here. And so we literally live 100% debt-free, that we don't owe a dime to anybody. Now, remember hearing me? Like, we rent our home, we don't own it, but that's kind of a choice for us right now. We don't owe a dime to anybody in the world. And let me tell you, that feeling of freedom, when you don't owe anybody anything and you got money in the bank in case something happens, you have an actual emergency fund for emergencies. Then you don't got to figure out like, oh, this car needs new tires. Like, what are we going to do? We swipe the debit card, right? It turns that emergency into just an annoyance. Like, what things that once would just cause us to stress out when there's a car bill, now it's annoying, right? It's like, we don't feel like spending $1,000 to fix something on the van, but like, we do it. And it's not that stressful. It's just annoying. But we did the work. And we sacrificed, and we worked hard for those 20 months. And let me tell you, those 20 months and then a couple months after, while we built up our emergency fund, the best 2 years that we've spent. Incredibly hard, challenging, difficult years, but now we're on the other side of it, and we're reaping the benefits of it, and we will reap those benefits for the rest of our lives. That we don't have to worry about the stress of debt anymore. We don't have to worry about the stress of how are we going to handle this emergency anymore. And so those 2 years, even though they were a long, hard 2 years to get to where we are now, 100% worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat if I had to. But I want to walk you through that, what we did, so that you could do it too. Because I want you to be financially free. I want you to have that peace of mind. I want you to be able to sleep better at night. I want you to not fight about money with your wife. I want you to have money freed up in your monthly income to be able to invest and build that generational wealth, so you could put money away for your kids' college, so you could put money away for your retirement, so you could go buy sneakers when you want to, right? Like, I want you to be able to do the hard work so that you can reap the benefits from it. Because if you sacrifice the next year or 2 years or whatever it takes to get yourself into a good financial spot, you will reap the benefits of that for the rest of your life. So here's a couple things that we did. Number one, we got on a budget. That's super simple, but not everybody does it. And it kind of blows my mind that not everybody does it. But we got on a budget. Budget simply writing down on paper where you plan to spend your money, right? So if you make $4,000 a month, if you bring home $4,000 a month, you were sitting down and you were writing down, and I just use an Excel spreadsheet for this, but you writing down like $1,500 rent, $100 electricity, $100 cable bill. You're writing down every single thing, and then the hardest part of it is when you get to the spending portion of it, right? Because that's the part where you could blow your budget out the water. If you write down that, hey, we're going to spend $500 a month on groceries, but you will always spend $1,000, like, bro, you're not going to make progress that way because you're always going $500 over budget. And so we had to, when we were doing this, we had to make conscious decisions that we were going to cut stuff out because it just didn't meet the budget. And so we cut out eating out. Like, we went out to eat when we got a gift card from someone to go somewhere. That's when we went out to eat. Like, we literally just didn't go to restaurants or get takeout for almost 2 years because we made a decision that said, hey, we could go out to eat and it might be $60, or we can make it at home for like $6. And so we made the decision to say, hey, we value being debt free more than we value going to Olive Garden. And we like Olive Garden. Say what you want about it. Like, we dig the OG. But we made a conscious decision to say we value being debt free and being financially free over going out to eat. So that was a big thing that we cut out. We cut out buying sneakers. I love sneakers. I didn't buy a single pair of sneakers for 2 years. Not a single pair of sneakers for 2 years because it didn't fit the budget. Because we valued being debt free more than we valued having sneakers on our feet, having like cool sneakers on our feet. We had shoes, but we weren't buying J's during that time. But a budget is just writing down all of your spending for that month. And you will have to make a decision on what you value when you're doing that. Because if you want to go spend $250 on a pair of J's, dope. If you got that, go get it. But that's $250 you're not going to be putting towards your debt. And so we crunched everything down as much as we could where we could maximize how much of our income we were putting towards debt. And so we spent the least amount of money on all these other things that we could. We didn't travel a whole lot. We didn't, go out to eat. We weren't buying like fancy clothes or nothing like that. We weren't buying tons of new video games and all that. We were maximizing how much money we put towards our debt every single month. And honestly, it was well over 50% of our income was going towards debt. We were throwing as much as we could towards it. The second thing is choosing your approach, choosing your strategy, right? And so you got to be on a budget, but then choosing your strategy of how you're going to pay off debt. And there's two main strategies, right? There's the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. And the debt snowball is this, and this is Dave Ramsey's way, and this is how we did it because it made the most sense for us. So the debt snowball is you list all of your debts out from smallest to largest, the overall balance, not of your monthly payment on it, but your overall balance. So if you got a credit card that you owe $800 total, you put that one first. And then if you had another credit card where you owe $2,000, you put that. If you had a medical bill that's $3,000, that's the third one. If you had a car bill that's 10 grand, that's the fourth. And if you have a student loan that's like 20 grand, then that's the next one, right? And so you list them in order from smallest to largest, and then you attack that smallest one, right? And so if that smallest one, if the minimum payment is $15 a month, and you did your budget, and you're like, hey, at the end of our budget, we got an extra $1,200. Well, you take that whole $1,200 plus the minimum payment, you pay minimum payments on all the other things except the smallest, and then you throw all the money you can at that smallest debt and attack it, right? If you had $1,200 extra money and your smallest is only $800, well, you paid that off, and then you got another $400 you would put on the next one. Then you snowball it, and you take your minimum payment from the first one in all the extra money. So $1,200 plus the 15 minimum payment, you pay $1,215 plus the minimum payment of the second smallest debt, say it's $30. You take $12.45 and you start paying that towards the second debt until you knock it out. And usually you start building up momentum, and that's Dave Ramsey's thing on it, is that the behavior is more important than the math. Because if it was just about math, you wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. And so for him, he tells his people to ignore the interest rate on these and just list them in order from smallest to largest and pay them off that way. And every time you pay a debt off, you take whatever that money you were adding to that, add it to the minimum payment of the next one, and then keep snowballing it. And eventually, even though you were only paying like $1,200 a month on the smallest, by the last one, you add up all these minimum payments plus that $1,200, you might be throwing like $1,800 a month at that last one. And sometimes that last one can take you like well over half of the debt-free journey, right? Because the smallest ones, like you can knock out like 1, 2, 3. And that's part of Dave Ramsey's strategy with the snowball is those small ones, man, you kill it, you get a little boost of momentum. You're like, oh, that feels good. Like, hey, I don't owe that credit card no more. Like, this is good. Like, this is getting better. You pay off that second one, you're like, yo, that's out the way too. You pay off that medical bill, you're like, oh, this is feeling good. All of a sudden, you paid off like 3 minor debts all in the course of like 2 or 3 months. And it starts getting you to believe that you can actually do this, right? And so Dave Ramsey's thing, it's about behavior. It's about the momentum that you gain. And this strategy works. And this is the strategy that we use, that we listed our smallest one first. Didn't really pay attention to the interest rate. We just listed the smallest one first. We just threw everything that we could at that. And that first one was gone in a couple months. And then we tackled on the second one. Well, that first one was like, we had put a couch for our new house on a credit card. It was like the stupidest thing we've ever done. So we financed this really expensive couch, beautiful couch, love that couch. But like we threw it on a credit card. So the first thing we did was we paid off that one. The other strategy that people use is called the debt avalanche. And it's kind of just the same idea, but the opposite attack, where you list your debts from largest interest rate to the smallest, right? And so if you have like a car loan at, 3%, that might be your lowest interest rate. Whereas if you have a credit card at 28%, right, that's going to be the first one. And then if you have student loans at like 8% or something, like that'd be in the middle. And so the debt avalanche says like, hey, to maximize our money, we are going to put all of our money, all of our extra income towards the highest interest debt, because that's the one accruing the interest the fastest. So we want to knock that out the quickest, right? And so the benefit of this approach is that you're going to end up paying probably less money in the long run, because you're taking out the higher interest things and you're saving like the little interest rates, like maybe your car loan at 3%. You're saving that for the end, whereas that might have been a little bit higher up on the list depending on the size of your loans, because the debt snowball just focuses on the overall balance, whereas the avalanche focuses on the interest rate. The benefit is you may end up paying less money in the long overall. The con of it is if that first one is really big, it might take you a really long time to knock that out, right? Like if you have a credit card where you owe 10 grand on it and the interest rate's like 30%, that can take like if you only got $1,000 a month to throw at that after you do your budget, like that could take you a really long time. And so you might get discouraged, you might fall out of it. That's the con of it. You don't get these little momentum hits that you get when you knock out the smallest ones first. And so both of them have their merits. Different financial people will recommend different things. Like I said, we went with Dave Ramsey's debt snowball method. That seemed to make the most sense to us. And so that's the method that we chose to utilize. It worked for us. We ended up paying off 80 grand in 20 months. Right? $80,000 in 20 months, averaged it out to about $4,000 a month. But we're going to get into some different things in just a second. But you got to choose a strategy that works for you, right? So you do your budget, you choose a strategy, choose the debt snowball, choose the debt avalanche. One of those two things can help you break free of that debt. The third thing, get extra money. I know it's just easy to say that, but like we literally live in the side gig economy. There are side gigs just everywhere. People are doing coaching on the side. People are doing handyman stuff on the side, hanging TVs on the side, Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. Like there's all these different ways that you could go out. Like if you can't get overtime at your job, there's all these other ways that you could go out and make money using your skills, your talents, your passions. You can turn a side hustle, you can turn a hobby into a side hustle, bring in some extra income to help tackle your debt. Right? When we were going through this, my wife, she's a nurse. OT was regularly available to her. She picked up OT a couple times a month. Helped tremendously towards our debt. Like she's the MVP, man. Like helped tremendously towards our debt payoff strategy. As a youth pastor, I worked overtime all the time. Never got paid overtime. So I went out and I started Ubering on the side. I started Ubering all over Philly, man. And it actually became really enjoyable for me to do. I love being down in the city, driving through the historic parts, all that. And so I got to meet dope people as I'm Ubering them around, hear their stories, and make some extra money on the side, man. So it's like I'd go out after work some nights. I'd go out on the weekends, and I would Uber to help bring in extra money. Sell stuff. Bro, when we were moving, you wouldn't believe, like when you move, when you do a big move like Philly to Indy, like when you're moving states, bro, you don't realize how much stuff that you have that you don't actually need. Right? Like so many of us, man, we got garages and sheds and attics and maybe bedrooms like full of stuff that we ain't using forever. Facebook Marketplace it, man. eBay that stuff. Like whatever, like if you ain't using it, sell it. Bro, if you got boxes and boxes of these Johns sitting in your closet, can you sell some of them? Like I know like I might be tripping right now, but like how important is it for your family to be financially secure? Right? And you know, we sold stuff that we didn't need, that we didn't use. When we were moving, we were already debt free at this time, but like when we were moving, there was just stuff that we're looking at. We're like, we don't need that. We don't need that. And it's like, hey, either we're putting it in a truck and then storing it there, or we sell it here. We made like between $5,000 and $6,000 selling random stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Man, it felt like I was like there was people just driving up to our house, and I was like, 3 people showed up at the same exact time one day to like buy different things. I had like our whole porch just covered in stuff that we were like bookshelves and lawn equipment, like all this random stuff. Like people were just showing up. We made between $5,000 and $6,000 over the course of like a month or two, just selling random stuff that we had that we just didn't use anymore. And so if you got stuff that you can sell to bring in some extra money, like Facebook Marketplace is a great resource for that. Man, but finding extra money, and maybe it's cutting money out of your budget too. You know, if you're spending like $1,000 a month on groceries, and you think you could do $600 a month, like, hey, that's an extra $400 a month you could be throwing at. You know, if you got a gym subscription that you ain't ever used, like, I'm not for cutting out the gym. If you use it, I think it's, you know, we kept paying for our gym memberships even during our debt-free journey, because that's, our health is important to us, and so we weren't willing to compromise that. But like, hey, if you ain't using these subscriptions, cut them out, man. Like, get more money however you can. And so that's the basics, man. Number 1, get on a budget. Number 2, choose a strategy, the debt snowball or the debt avalanche. And number 3, get more money. You know, sometimes that's changing jobs too. You know, the new trend that I'm seeing going around is that people are making more money by switching jobs than they are from asking for a raise. So if you ain't getting that raise at your current job, you know, are there other job opportunities out there where you could get a bump in your salary by switching jobs? You know, it's like I got several friends that have done this, and they have made more money simply by doing the same thing somewhere else. And so, you know, man, whatever you gotta do, like, if you are living paycheck to paycheck and you have a ton of debt in your life, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's probably because you got a ton of debt in your life. Get on a plan with your wife on how you can eliminate that from your life. Because, man, that debt is holding you back. That debt is stressing you out. That debt is not your friend. I don't care if it's letting you have the minivan of your dreams. I don't care if it's letting you have all the J's on your feet. Like, that stuff is not worth it, man. Because now that we live on the other side, guess what? I buy sneakers when I want, and I ain't stressing about it. I'm not going into debt for sneakers, man. We bought our minivan. We paid cash for it. We had our bank write a cashier's check for our minivan. We brought it to the dealer. We paid cash for our minivan, bro. Like, these are the types of things, like, we ain't worried about an emergency happening and how are we going to pay for that, because we have an emergency fund in place. And so, man, like, act like your family depends on you figuring this out, because it does. And I don't really put this out there too much. Like, I haven't put this out there on the podcast, but man, like, if you need in-depth help on getting onto a budget, on getting onto a debt payoff strategy, if your thing is like, hey, I can't even afford the minimum payments on my stuff, like, how am I going to get, one of the side things that I do is financial coaching. I do individual financial coaching for individuals and for couples. And man, if that is something that you could benefit from, man, please reach out to me. Like, I would love to sit down with you, help you out. I debated even putting that in because I'm not trying to plug that necessarily, but it's like, hey, I want to offer that in case someone needs that sort of on hands experience where they need someone to come into the depths with them and help them out with that. Man, I'd be honored to help out anybody that needs it. And so, hey, whatever you got to do, go check out Dave Ramsey stuff, research more about the debt avalanche. If you think that might be something that you're more interested in, listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast, man. That stuff is inspirational for getting out of debt. They do debt-free screams all the time. You can YouTube that stuff. People will share their stories that are very, very similar to mine on how they got out of debt. And they focused, they worked as a team, they reduced their expenses and maximized their income, and they just hyper-focused on this thing. And you do that for a year or two, you sacrifice for that year or two. We didn't buy sneakers, we didn't go on vacation, we didn't go out to eat. But now we're on the other side of it, man. We can breathe. We ain't stressing about money. We ain't worried about it. We live a different kind of life now because we took that time, that period of our life, to focus, to work as a team and say, hey, this is important for us and for our future kids to get our finances in order so that we can do the stuff that DJ was talking about in episode 9, that we can invest. We can put money away for our kids' college. We can put money away for retirement. We can have fun money to play with if we want to experience with the stock market and day trading. We can do these things without worrying about the debt that's just hanging around our necks. And so talk with your wife about it, man. Get on a budget. Get on a plan. Get that money. Pay off that debt. Set your family up for a great financial future. The drop for this week: evaluate your finances. How you doing, man? You in a great spot? Is it the biggest stressor in your life? Is it something you ain't worried about at all? Is it something that maybe you should worry about and you're not? Evaluate with your wife, because maybe you think things are great and she's stressing about it. Talk about that with her. Get on a plan together, whatever that is, whether you're deciding to pay off debt or not. Get on a plan. Work together as a team with your finances. One of the things that really happened, we paid off the debt, but man, it brought us together, because I feel like what we discovered during this is like, hey, if we can overcome this, if we could do this together, paying off that debt, becoming debt free, if we could do this together, there really isn't a whole lot that we can't do. And so it brought us that much closer together as teammates, as friends, as a couple, to be able to attack and do that together. Well, hey, however you're watching and listening, thanks you for joining us. Drop us a 5-star review, a thumbs up, leave us a comment or review. We really appreciate that. And wherever you are with your finances, evaluate them, find help if you need it. Look at Dave Ramsey's stuff, research the debt avalanche or debt snowball, whatever it is you gotta do. I'm cheering for y'all. Hope y'all win in money. Hope y'all win in marriage and parenting. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. I'm cutting that out.